That's loud. That works. Yeah, that'll wake you up in the morning there.
They find out that that was a violation written up. The next day, they fix it. They're not ready to do I'm sitting there going, okay, let's try this again. My fingers. He tried to. Do you know? Yeah. I know. That's why we came straight back. I had plans for you to do. I said, screw it. You're the one that's for sure. I'm not waiting. I almost called you last night. Address it today.
I just found it in the stack of Jay shows up.
Is it good?
Should be good. Once you start talking, I'll adjust your volume. And then...
All right. All right, guys, thanks for coming. We're going to get the volume. We're going to adjust it here as we go. Good? Awesome. At least I'm not hearing myself talk at that point, so that's a plus. So the intent today is to go over some job descriptions, some basic scuttlebutt that I've heard over the past, some of it for several months, but we're going to clear up a few things as far as job descriptions go. Some stuff here at 86, and then we're going to go over the new policies that the officers have come up with, and HR has vetted where it's necessary with the contract and all that. And then you guys can ask questions, of course, throughout, and then if you got any burning things at the end, you can do that. Hopefully we're done in about an hour and 15 minutes or so, I'd imagine, because you do have EMS training after this, and the good Dr. LaCosta will be in to do that. Which there may be some changes on his front as well. Dr. LaCosta called yesterday, said he's actually leaving UC, but that will not affect our medical direction. He's going to stay with us, which I'm kind of excited about, to be honest, and he's going to be with Colerain as well. So that will be his two departments. I think in some ways that'll be great for us because that brings him back into the fold for us, whereas now, for the past couple years, I think we've had some variety. Some have been very good, and some things have been not so great. So I think we'll correct some things that I was looking for on that front as well. No, we didn't go into specifics on that stuff. That's his deal. As far as I'm concerned, he wants to stay with us. I'm happy to have him stay with us. I think he's a great medical director. He's very personable. He cares, and he understands what we do. So that's a lot of the keys of things where you don't always get that. So that's just one little thing that's going on. Up here is the captain's official job description, which is a new one. We are working on updating everybody's job description, which is one of the things to be done, which is something that HR wants done because some of these job descriptions have been around since the creation of the job. And they're just a little bit out of date. What we did here is we basically went through, and it's nothing surprising, exactly what the captain's responsible for. He is not a bargaining unit member, like you know. One of the biggest questions we get is, what are they going to respond on? And to some degree, they have a lot of, discretion in that. But it's exactly what you would expect. You want those guys to show up on things where command presence is necessary. That is their position. That's what they're well versed in this. They understand what they need to do. Serious calls, non-breathers, things like that. We want them there. We want them on it. If nothing else, just as an interface with the public or with the people that are there. And an extra pair of hands. The rest of this just basically goes through, exactly what you would expect. Management of the scene, management in the department. This is... There are no super duper classes or anything like that they have to have that is out of line, unlike with some of the lieutenants and the AO positions where we're saying, hey, you need to have XYZ classes. Up here at the top, as I give you all eye rolls, you know, in NIMS 300, 400, fire instructor is still there. They're all medics, and NIMS and blue card fire officer classes, and some of the other stuff. So that's not very exciting. I think it's beginning to assimilate into the department fairly well. Anybody have any questions for the captains or about what the captains are doing thus far that you have a burning desire to have an answer to at this point? To me, that captain runs the day, right? I think they're all on board with this. The lieutenants run the stations. The captain runs the day. He is overall responsible for that, and John and I are here to run the department. And that's how we plan on operating this beast. It's going to be a little different because before, you know, it was a shell game on who was in charge. That's who's in charge. It's nobody else. So the other thing I want to bring up is Ben Castile's position, because I've heard a lot of things about Ben Castile's position from a lot of places. I can tell you that this job description was written for him. It was vetted by the pension board. Nothing Ben Castile is doing for us violates his disability. It does not violate the pension board. I have a letter from the pension board saying that this job description is absolutely 100% okay. That would make no sense for me to tell Ben Castile to do something that would possibly compromise his pension status. Nothing at all. Some of the things that are in this job description may surprise you. For instance, the fact that Ben Castile can actually run accountability on a fire scene. That is not something innately I would have thought would have been acceptable by the pension board. It is, because he's not doing firefighting and he's not doing EMS. Is Ben allowed to take C-spine on the scene of an auto accident? No, that's doing EMS things. That should not happen. He understands this. He knows exactly what he can and can't do. When his job description was written, it was to do a lot of things with pre-plans, but that is not all. This job description was put in here to do, quality improvement for EMS, to teach EMS, to come up with programs, exactly what he's doing right now. The computer stuff is in here, basic da-da-da-da-da. Rather conducts and evaluates EMS training activities and classroom instruction sessions, including BLS, ACLS, CPR, EMT programs. Excuse me. Comes up with those trainings, checks plans, da-da-da. All that stuff he's currently doing is okay for him to do. I know not everybody really even gives it a lot of thought, but I know some people give it a lot of thought. I promise you, we're not going to have him do anything that he's not supposed to do. And I just want to clear that up once and for all so there's no heartburn on your end about some things you may see him doing. Anything he does is okay, as far as what we're going to have him do anyway. Any questions on Ben? Mm-hmm.
Is that the same job description for a full-time clerk? And when you picture that rolling out?
We pictured the full-time clerk being done. The tax department doesn't have their full-time clerk yet. They do? Oh, I'm wrong again. Oh, yeah? Oh, well, okay. So they have theirs now. So apparently we're next. Yeah, apparently we're next. There's a lot, I keep saying this, but there really is a lot going on down the street. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll be hearing about that very shortly.
So the interviews and everything are done, and you're just waiting to...
The testing process is done.
Okay.
So this process is also, and I haven't spoke with Noah exactly how the rest of this process goes, but it is a purely civil service process. So this was available to anybody who put in for it, right, from the outside, et cetera, which is, the way kind of some of this stuff was done before. But what they did was there were 2 positions, and I think there was a list of 14 names that passed the test. And the way it works is basically we now get to do a fire department assessment of the candidates for what we want. And that is very As opposed to our positions where it's very cut and dry about what you need to do and who you can pick and da-da-da, this is very open. At this point, once they pass the test, they're eligible to have the position, but then you can do, like we can do you know what a pre-plan is? You know, stuff that is fire department specific, because I don't need somebody to type a memo. That's not what I'm looking for. I want somebody who has some tech savvy to them, who understands fire department operations, who understands shift work, you know, this stuff. I just don't want to have to teach people that. Just about anybody can balance a checkbook. So, and as I understand it, really, we can pick from anybody in that 14, well, 13 now, apparently. So, is how it works.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, Greg?
What is the title of the position?
Of what? Administrative clerk, part-time admin clerk.
And we're going to have a part-time and a full-time
No.
administrative clerk?
No. No. Mm-hmm. No, you're good.
Describe his position. He said, are we eligible for clerk? That means that his is drawn up, planned, and designed. When it's activated, that will be it.
Yep.
Not
Yep.
two positions.
Even right now, Ben is paying into OPERS. Now, he can never collect on that because of his pension status with OP&F, but he still has to pay into it. So, you know, it is what it is. That's just that's the way it works. When OPERS invites you to the party, you have to pay to play. So, and since he's in that part-time position, which just like, you know, the majority of our part-time firemen, they pay into OPERS as well. They all pay into OPERS as well. So, anything else?
I have a question on number 9 there.
Number 9.
The way it reads, it looks like he may take command of a scene. Is that?
No, that does not mean he can command a scene. He can do support functions on a scene. Yeah. Technically, and that's our, sorry, I just tapped that. That's our decision. Technically, he can command a scene. But for us, that won't happen. For us, he'll do support functions only. Mm-hmm.
So part-time fireman paying the OPERS?
Mm-hmm.
I never did as a part-time.
What was it? It's not OPERS then. It's,
Security.
yeah,
'Cause I just paid. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I know, because I was thinking it was OPERS. Credit that I didn't know.
Yeah, it was back in the day. You would think the person that works on this, say every 2 weeks, would understand that and say that right? Yeah, but yeah. What's a person to do? Yes, sir?
Administrative clerks pay into.
Yes, yes, that they do. I did have that right. Ben is paying into OPERS. He's well aware of that.
That's
Yeah, Kevin.
there, he's gonna be looking at plans and stuff too?
He can.
Okay.
He is not. You are. You and your inspection bureau.
I'm not gonna be here forever, guys, is what I'm saying.
It's okay, Kevin. You'll be all right.
You're not getting another person.
Yeah, you're not getting another person. That clerk's going to have enough to do without doing plan review as well. So that job description was written with a lot of things in mind. And basically, and actually Ralph wrote that, when he wrote that, that was to give him the most, or that person the most ability to do as much as possible and have things to do without being narrowed down to, I'm just going to type a memo today. Plus, you wanted to make sure you included as much as possible that he could be exposed to have that verified so that you don't get caught up in the background and, you know, OP&F send a letter, hey, we heard, and they have no sense of humor about that. And neither one of us wants that to happen. All right. So the next thing, pantry issues. I've heard a lot of scuttlebutt about pantry stuff over the past year even. And other people that have just come to 86 have questions about, you know, hey, where does the pantry fit in? Where does Ben fit in? Where does Jennifer fit in the whole scheme of things? Guys, that pantry does not affect your day-to-day life 99.9% of the time. Even on Christmas, when they do the big Christmas hoorah here that takes up this entire side of the building now, we didn't make anybody play with us that day. And that's a big to-do. The people that helped us that day offered to help us with that day. Is that not right? I don't come get you, or Jennifer does not come get you and tell you to go give somebody food. 99.9% of the time, that is handled by myself, John, Ben, or Jennifer. It's simple stuff. We're not telling you to come move stuff. I mean, the 99 point, and again, I keep using that because it's not that it never happens. I mean, yeah, you've taken boxes out to the trash. But if you have a problem taking boxes out to the trash, I'm sorry, take the boxes out to the trash. That's really about the extent of what you do to help that out almost all the time. Am I wrong, Lieutenant Holland? Yeah, I mean, I say that because you're here. You've been here, you were here. I've heard everything from, man, they come grab you and, you know, when you're out doing training to do this way. No, they don't. No, they don't. If we have a big delivery of stuff, you may have to help get that off the truck. But again, most of the time, John and I are out there helping get that stuff off the truck too. So it's a team effort. We will feed whoever comes in. The hours are from 8 to noon, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Occasionally somebody will come in after hours. The officers have all been, you know, just give them food. It doesn't matter if you do it right. There is no right, guys. If you don't know what to do, don't worry about, you know, in fact, we don't even check ID. You're not allowed to check ID anymore, right? You don't have to worry about checking ID. You don't need a piece of mail. If somebody comes in and says, I'm hungry, I don't want to hear that they were driving a Lexus. I don't care. Okay, and you shouldn't either. You shouldn't care if they have an iPhone in their hand, all right? I understand that may grate you personally, but just give them food. You're not going to be giving them a night stay. If they want a night stay, they get shot over to the police department. They are handling that now. So, you know, all you have to do is tell them to, you know, either contact the police sergeant or send them down to the PD. And the police will handle those nighttime stays. Because that was the big source of friction, not for you guys, but between the Christmas fund, the PD, and the people. It was just getting confusing. People were taking advantage, which, you know, that's going to happen.
So we don't ask for IDs or anything anymore?
Just give them food. Just give them food. What we've done is we've actually gone, we're actually working with the free store. And if I say something wrong, feel free to correct me because I do my best at this. But we're actually getting food for free now in a lot of things. And so as a part of that, you're not allowed to ask for ID. For them, it's good enough. If I'm willing to come in and say I'm hungry and I need food, that's enough. So, you know, those of you that are here, the officers know how to do it, or if you need a refresher, that's no problem, but it's all written on those little plastic tags back there. And to be honest, if, you know, ask them how many people it is, give them a few bags of groceries, and tell them if they need more to come back tomorrow or something like that when the food pantry is actually open, and we'll handle it that way. It's super simple. This is not something that takes up hours of your day or even minutes of your day most of the time. So those guys report directly to John and myself. If they need something and one of us is not around, they may ask the captain or the shift officer. But other than if Mark is walking by and Jennifer's saying, hey, could you get that box off the top shelf for me? That's going to be about the extent of what your involvement is in the day. So I think John Eichelbacher's done a lot of sorting. But again, that was not something he was told to do, you know. So.
Now, at the present time, on, is it the second Saturday at SUNC?
That's gone away.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, they didn't have enough traffic, so that got ixnayed. So, yeah.
Fourth Wednesday now of every month, we'll have a mobile pantry at Yorktown. So you may see traffic in there.
Yeah. It's usually the people that are in Yorktown. So, again, doesn't affect you very much at all. So, any other questions on that stuff? No? All right. If you do, please ask. Please ask. Don't let this blow up into something that's not. And, you know, at the dinner table over 3 months, it becomes, you know, something it definitely is not. Okay. So the SOPs. So the officers and HR have all gone through and rewritten just like I promised to the union that we would have this stuff squared away so that there is no no inconsistency. At least we're going to do our darndest to limit that. And it's going to be clarified and everything. We rewrote it to reference the contract because that's where we were getting in trouble. Every time, over the years, well, we'll do this. Well, we'll do this. Well, we'll do this if then, if then, if then, if then, if then. And it got to be just really complicated. And you guys couldn't keep up with it. And then we were making mistakes, with, days and this and that. And that's just, everything we do now is going to be referenced in the contract, and it's going to be referenced in policy. And I believe I have hit all the high points on pain points and things like that in these policies. Again, these are dynamic documents. If I didn't, we'll fix it. Even some of these that have been in place less than a year, we have fixed it because of the way we have changed everything up. So special teams is one we'll start with. So any of you that are on a special team are eligible to respond if you're on duty, and it's an emergency detail. Not something that you could sign up for beforehand or whatever. The way I look at it, the way Chief Mackey looks at it, and the officers, is this is considered to be mutual aid. It's no different than if they call for a squad. So you guys that are on SWAT, hazmat, a maximum of 2 people can respond from duty, from a duty status. If it's a big USAR thing and there happens to be 4 USAR people on duty that day, those 4 can duke it out as the 2 that are allowed to go down to 10 people. Even if there's 15 people on duty, only 2. Above 2, they have to get somebody to come in and cover them. So it's not much different than if, just a second, Ben, not much different than if, again, we send a medic into Woodlawn. We got those 2, we send 1 piece of apparatus, we're sending 2 people out to do that type of thing. Again, it's referenced in the daily staffing policy that we'll review here in a minute about moving people around. And generally, what we've done is we've done 4 hours is the mark there, so that, if Ellis goes out and does an investigation and it takes him an hour and a half, you don't have to move people around stations to cover somebody for an hour and a half. If Ben goes out and does a USAR thing and he's going to be gone, 6 or 7 hours, then that kicks a few other things into play. So where we'll move people around to do that. But again, that's going to be a lot of that is at the shift officer's discretion to provide the best coverage for the city based on, where that person came from, where it's at. There's not everything is cut and dry 100% of the time. Yeah, Ben. Yeah, probably. Ah, what in the world? That is not what I wanted to do. Do not. It's saved everywhere. So anyway, like I said, they can arrange for coverage if they're not, because of the staffing policy and such, they're not allowed to go. But they can't leave until that person gets here. So if it's Ian Obenchain coming in for you, you're going to be waiting a lot longer than if, Scott Holland is coming in for you or Dan Runyon's coming to cover for you so that you can go. We went over the mutual aid part of it. The stuff apart of, well, if you're off duty and you're on a USAR call out, guys, we need to do a better job about this all the way around. All you have to do is make a phone call. Dude, I'm down here in Anderson Township looking for a kid. I'm going to be late, and just let the shift officer know so that we know that. If you're a part-time person, I'm saying this because I know that not everybody's in here, but this is going to be on YouTube, and it's going to be available to everybody, and you're going to be late for your shift, it is your responsibility to let the shift officer know that you will be late for your day. We're not going to be guessing about whether or not you're going to be late for your day, and that goes for full-time people too. If you're going to be late, you need to notify an officer, and preferably the shift officer, so that he knows exactly who's going to be there at what time during that day. If you're going to be half an hour late, suck it up, Buttercup. It's on you. Notify somebody. We can't. We're having too many problems with people trying to cover for people and make phone calls after 6 o'clock. You have a responsibility to make sure that this place has coverage, and we're going to follow through with that. I'm not saying we're hanging people from the trees. We just have to know. If you're Rico Parker and you're at the city and you're going to be an hour late, and you know that the night before, or you're coming from Coleraine, I can't remember the guy's name that comes from Coleraine every time, you know, all you have to do is say, hey, I'm coming from Coleraine in the morning, da-da-da-da. So we know who's coming. We know what to expect. I don't think that's out of line. Yeah?
So if you're responding to a call out, calling you while en route to that call out is qualification enough? If there's a possibility you're going to be late?
For the shift officer, not me.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Calling in on your route to the,
Well, I mean, yeah, and if it comes in at 5:45, you know.
but you don't know how long call outs are going to take or what you're going to be doing.
Right, right. I agree. And I mean, I expect USAR call-outs are longer than arson call-outs, which are, you know, and SWAT call-outs can sometimes go for hours on end. I get that. Generally, what this is written for is, you know, we got called out at 2 in the morning. We're still searching for the kid. It's 5:30 or 5 o'clock. I know I'm going to be late. If you expect it's going to go over into the shift, you just make that notification that it's going to happen. So you're still coming into work, right? You're just going to be late. And when you're late, you fall into that mutual aid category at that point. You're not going to be docked for being late at that point because you're on a call out. Does that make sense?
I'm just saying that if you call and notify them you're going on a call out, so they know you're out somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, if you're going to be there 7 hours, you're there busy. Enough that you might not be able to call in at 5 o'clock in the morning. But if you called in at 2, they're going to qualify you now.
I don't know if I've been on any scene where I have not had 15 seconds to text the shift officer at some point.
Every scene's different.
I get it. I get it. You have a responsibility to the City of Sharonville Fire Department to have someone make notification that you're not going to be there. Yep. Compensation hasn't changed. That's the same. And the rest of the off-duty stuff hasn't. If you're going to be a national deployment, if you're going out for a hurricane deployment, again, you call a chief officer and clear that before you're eligible to roster for that deployment. And again, the intent is to allow you to deploy. And, you know, there's always that circumstance where you may not be able to, but our intent is to allow you to deploy. Yes, sir.
Are these policies going to be available for reference in a certification?
On the G drive in the policy folder, so long as someone doesn't delete it again. Someone was kind enough to delete the entire policy folder, just for the record. So, it is back, and then the updated ones will be on there this morning. And then also I'm going to email them out. So. And no, there was not an investigation as to who deleted the folder. So the write-up policy is the next one we'll go over. Most of you have seen this in one form or fashion. It hasn't changed a lot. It is still $1.50 an hour if you get put into one of those write-up positions or acting officer positions. The main change to this is that we have made it to where when the lieutenant rides up into the chances that the captain's not here and they're riding up into that shift officer position, they also get that $1.50 an hour, because they are riding up into a different classification position. The other thing is the Station 86 lieutenant, if there's an acting, if they're in that officer seat on the truck, even though the captain or another officer is here, they also qualify because they are in the officer seat of that engine. The same time frame still apply. It's still 4 hours, yada, yada, all that. None of that stuff has actually changed. We also decided, based upon discussion in the officers' meeting, to go ahead and make it 9 acting officers positions. As of right now, I think we have 8. I think the only person I haven't heard from is Bob Ullery as to whether or not he's going to accept that position or not. So we have 8 currently. Pending that, 3 per day. That number, just like the rest of the policies, may change based on what we see as we move through this process over the next year or 2 years, type of thing. It initially started at 6, and so we're going to see where this fleshes out with 9. It's not that it costs more to have 9 or anything like that. We want as many people that want to be involved up to that point. You're going to get the training and things like this that we mentioned at the bottom here. That's one of the biggest questions that I have gotten since we've started this. We all know how those positions go into play and how they operate. They are not officers, but they are in that position. So does an acting officer deal out discipline? No, he does not. Will he reference that to an actual lieutenant? Yes. There is the possibility that there's an officer overtime position. This policy does go into how that would be filled. And then also it goes into if, you know, Tony, Ryan, and Dan are all wanting to be acting officer on the day, and then the captains have the ability, or the officers have the ability to sort by acting officer hours for this year in crew sense. So they can look and see that Tony had 24 hours, Ryan's had 0, and Dan's had 12. So Ryan gets first shot at being acting officer that day. When we're doing overtime, if it is an overtime position, an officer will get preference over an acting officer when they call in, regardless of the number of hours that they may have on the overtime list. That's because it is preferential to have a legit officer versus an acting officer in a position at the department. What? Training requirements, just a second. The acting officers have, overall, they've got 24 months to get at least be working on a lot of this stuff. I know some of these classes come and go. It's hard to get. I take that into account. We're not going to beat you over the head with it. Within 2 years, though, I expect you to have been making progress towards some of these. What I do expect within 12 months is to have blue card, because blue card is fairly straightforward. It's simple to get, and we want everybody to be on board with that. Fire Officer 1, that comes and goes. It seems like those come, you'll have 3 classes, then you won't have any for a year, and then you'll have, So we'll let you know when those are there. I will not sign you up for that. Part of this position is having the responsibility to meet your obligations, and that's part of this. I will send out things that I hear about that I think you may be interested in as an officer or an acting officer. You have the ability to sign up, choose to sign up for those or not. But in the end, you're still responsible for getting the Fire Officer 1, the blue card, and then the leadership series. The one I put on here is a National Fire Academy series that gets taught. There's another one. Help me with this one. The other leadership series. We just talked about it. It's not Ohio Fire Chiefs. It's there's another leadership series out there that counts as well. I mean, it's the same thing. It's a 1, 2, and 3. It's just from a different provider. So these things aren't set in stone. These are just general requirements. The only thing that is set in stone is a Fire Officer 1, a blue card, or the blue card, and then some type of a leadership series. Any questions on writing up? Yes, sir.
On the open shift for an officer position, officers get first preference.
Yes.
What about the opposite if it's mandation?
If it's mandation?
Yeah.
The mandation part of it would be, actually, I can't even imagine.
Make it fair, it'd have to be an officer getting mandated with it.
Yeah, it would. Again, guys, we've talked about the mandation part of this policy too. In order for somebody to get mandated into an officer position, gosh, a lot of stuff has to fall apart. A lot of stuff, because we've got 3 acting officers and you've got 4 officers on the shift to begin with. And most of the time, there's just a lot of things would have to fall apart. Nothing is impossible in life, but yeah. An officer will pick that up.
So let's clarify, hold on, let's clarify this. We had a single officer call off this morning. Lieutenant Thomas called off this morning. But we still have...
You have 3 acting officers on duty.
And we have 2 lieutenants today, right now? Do I got that right? And then Pat. So you're saying if we had 3 lieutenants call off, that's where we're going to first preference? How do you want this filled, is what I'm getting at.
The only time you're going to officer-only overtime would be if you would, for whatever reason, okay, you would have no acting officers available, and you would have no regular officers available, aside from maybe somebody that's sitting in the shift officer position. Or, you've got an open slot, and there is no acting officer available, and there is no, so there's like basically 7 people would have to be gone from that day to not have anything available.
If you have one.
So I've lost an entire shift almost before that would come into play. And if we get into that part of it, I imagine one of us is going to be here anyway, because that's way down the staffing line where that goes. I mean,
Chief, maybe I'm missing something. Don't you want a minimum of one?
I want one legit officer on for the day.
Okay, so an acting officer cannot be the only officer.
He can't be the shift officer. Yeah, he cannot be the shift officer.
Okay.
That has to be a legit officer.
But if you only have one officer scheduled for, i.e. tomorrow, and he calls off, then that may make.
That makes officer overtime, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That helps me tremendously.
Yeah, in which case, again, you're going to have to mandate an officer, because that's, I mean, does that make sense?
I'm glad we clarified this. So
Yeah.
let's just stick with this morning, because this is a perfect example. Thomas called off last night, one of 4 officers working in the Sharonville Fire Department today.
Yep.
An officer does not get preference on that overtime because we still have 3 others.
Yes.
If he was the only officer here,
Yeah, I'm talking about officer only overtime.
okay, which is not really a change. Okay.
No, it is not.
Gotcha.
Right, but that, and I know where you're going. When Thomas calls off, that does not create officer overtime.
Correct.
That creates an overtime slot.
Correct.
Okay, that's just,
Yeah, no, I mean, we're talking in circles on that, but yeah, I think we're on the same page now.
Okay. Yeah, I misunderstood the.
Yes, sir.
And I might be beating a dead horse here, but I don't understand. So, if Thomas called off this morning, that his slot, his officer's slot at 87 will be filled by an acting officer.
Correct.
If there's no acting officers available on the unit day, then is that when you do only overtime, or do you just let that station go for all firefighters?
No, that would offer officer overtime, but acting officers are able to fill in on that too. So your pool then becomes the other 9 acting officers plus the remainder of the regular officers can sign up for that.
So long story short.
So if nobody did, I want an officer or an acting officer at each station. So there needs to be 3 on duty of some variety on a day.
otherwise it creates officer.
Then it would create officer overtime, yes. But again, on every day we have a combination of 7 officers and acting officers on every day.
If
Out of 13.
Right.
Still think I'm confused. If Thomas would have put us into overtime today, and Scott Holland put in for it, and Dan Runyon put in for it, would it matter who has least or most hours? Would you?
Yeah, you guys are overcomplicating this now. Okay. It is a big pool unless you have to have an officer. If you have to have an officer, then it goes out to overtime page, a regular overtime page for officer overtime, if you have to have an officer or acting officer. The only time you have to have a legit or a rank officer is at the shift officer position. That has to be a captain or a lieutenant. Thomas calling off today generated regular overtime because there are acting officers that can fill into his slot for today. If all 3 of those were off, plus Thomas called off, that would be officer overtime.
Okay, I guess what's throwing me is where you said that a lieutenant would get preferential, so that doesn't apply today.
Does not apply today because you had acting officers that can fill into his slot.
Okay.
The only time that officer-only overtime comes into play is if there is not an acting officer or regular officer that can fill that slot already on duty. And then, yes, it would be a mandating of an officer because that's a officer position. Are we good?
This will be semi-straightened out. You've got an SOP for staffing, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're getting just a little bit ahead of the game.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like I said, that's in that SOP for staffing. It says there needs to be an acting officer or an officer on duty at every station. So, at least I hope it's all straightened out. Let's put it that way. Okay, any other questions on that one? Well, I hope not. All right, so staffing. Really, this has not changed a lot either. What I did change was numbers because of the implementation of the District 86 car. The District 86 car will be staffed by the shift officer all the way down to 8 people. Once it gets to 8 people on duty for the day, that comes off the road and, you know, the world has fallen apart, let's be honest. But at that point, then we're down to what we need. Here in this, if you go through it, you know, considerations, 1 officer, 2 paramedics, and 1 engineer. Those paramedics and engineers, just like in the past, that can be a cross-trained person. Basically what we're looking for, we need somebody to drive the truck, and we need somebody a medic to ride on the medic unit. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope so. If not, we're way behind the 8 ball. And I did not allow enough time for today. But and then an officer or an acting officer at every station. That's the basic staffing requirements, the bare minimums for each, you know, classification for each day. Staffing levels are within the normal allowance or reductions for a limited period of time. Again, we're using 4 hours, and you'll see that throughout all the policies and things. Then those get assigned by the shift officer. So just because you're going to be gone for whatever reason for 2 hours doesn't mean we need to move people around. We're going to wait till at least 4 hours before we start shifting people around to adjust. Once you get 12 people or lower for a period greater than 4 hours, that's when we start going into the reduced staffing guidelines, as it would be. The biggest change is that when we come down to 12, in the previous version of this policy, we pulled that person from 88. The number one question we got every time we were going down into reduced staffing is, well, we're going to pull that person from 87. So as we spoke about this, people automatically want to run the 2 sides of town as far as medics go. It seems to make the most sense to people innately. So we were fighting that every day that this happened, in that we said, no, the policy says to pull it from 88. So instead of fighting that battle every day, and since this seems to make the most sense to people, we decided to pull that first person from 87. So the medic 87 will be last out. The other 2 will backfill into that position, and engine 87 will first respond until they're the 3rd medic, and then they will take that other medic call. And then if that was the case, when that happens, that District 86 will respond onto that because it's a reduced manpower situation, regardless of the medic call. And if they don't need 3 people on that ambulance, he'll take that other person, go back to 87 until that medic crew gets back. Does that make sense to everybody?
When does that become effective?
This stuff is going to be effective today. Yep. Yes?
I have a question on the 11 on duty. It seems like when we run into this, it's because somebody goes to medic school. We tie that back into the overtime. When do we phase out overtime for somebody going to medic school, and when do we not phase out overtime for somebody going to medic school?
So medic school is like part-time training leave. I think that's the best way to put that. We have not backfilled those people leaving, I don't think ever, for them to go to medic school. If I had to pay overtime for them to go to medic school, they would have to find trades.
Since that's going to be over, let's say they're going for 8 hours. Does
That would, yeah, generally you're going to move the people.
start shifting?
Yep.
So if you have 12 on duty, that includes the captain and the shift officer.
Yes.
So anytime we get a call off, it's going to be 12 or less. So we split the city in half effectively until the 3rd call out, and then medic 87.
We'll go into that here in just a little bit. Anytime you go into 12, you hit that. If you're actually at 11, then that's the next one below that, and it starts talking about what you need to do.
Trying to wrap my mind
Oh
around.
no, you're fine. It is different.
One call off will put us into that circumstance.
So it all depends on your day. So our staffing is looking better now. Nick's going to be starting the 4th. Cody started yesterday. So those 2 people, believe it or not, do make a difference. I can't give you a comparison this year versus last year that's really apples to apples as far as how many hours and things that we're doing, because we haven't got the staffing in place to do that comparison yet. Once Nick and Cody are both on board, then we can start doing some apples to apples comparisons. Like I've said, guys, we can't do another $440,000 overtime year. We just can't. And the staffing and the scheduling policy reflect that. So we just can't do it. The way we've written this stuff is we're going to, like I said, we'll get into the scheduling here in just a minute, but it's written to keep overtime down, but also to mirror the contract so that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're not jamming ourselves up on everything. So 12, we basically take the 1 from 87. When we go down to 11, like you said, Tony, Medic 87 is going to be out of service at that point. Engine 87 will first respond in district. The 86 and 88 cover all the medic calls, and off we go. And then it just keeps dropping down from there.
Standard duty day is 15, if I think correctly. Standard duty day is 15, person call off, we're down to 13, 2 call off, we're down to 12, 3 call off, we're down to 11.
Yeah, and believe it or not, our part-time staffing is actually coming up. Hopefully we may actually have a list again of part-time people. I mean, granted, it's, you know, guys, paramedics are a thing of the past. Just write those off in your mind, and I don't mean that negatively, but with all the people Cincinnati is hiring, all the people Colerane's hired, Montgomery, Mason, just Westchester, they're sucking up the part-time pool of medics. It's just, the people we're getting, I'm happy with. I think overall we're doing very, very well in our part-time ranks right now, and we're getting some quality people. But we're not going to get people with 15 years experience. It's just not going to happen. Those people aren't out there, and I think you all know that. 10,
Flexibility in your part-time schedule is why you're not getting those kind of people.
I don't know what else I can do, Mark. I mean, to be honest, because everybody's got.
The places that have all those people are the ones that when you walk into the chief's office and say, "Chief, I can't work next Saturday."
Yeah, and I can't afford to do that.
I know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We just can't. And we just talked to Westchester the other day, and they're in a world of hurt. They're in a world of hurt.
Mark, there's very few times where we don't let a part-timer off.
I'm not saying no. I'm just giving you as examples. When we sit around the kitchen table and talk about that.
If somebody comes to my office and says, "Chief, I need off this next weekend because I'm on vacation," I take them off the schedule.
Yeah, I do take a little bit of exception to that because Cesar Lopez was just off for 2 weeks. We have not denied anybody to be off.
And I'm not using any examples because I don't have any. I'm just saying when we sit around the kitchen and I listen to like Lieutenant Thomas talk about what it was like to work at Springfield and stuff, and they have a larger pool. That's what I'm just using that as an example.
But yeah, but I'm also telling you, before, yes, we were. Now, we're making exceptions for the part-timers to make it easier for them to get off. That's what we heard, that part-timers can never get off, that's why they're not getting
Yep.
off. Now we're bending over backwards to let the part-timers get off, and now I'm still hearing, well, they won't come work for us because they can't get off. If they don't want to come work for us, they don't want to come work for us. I mean,
What about paying for medical school? And then making them sign a contract? I mean, heck, volunteer departments are doing that.
I have no idea.
Hey, Mark,
I know on
the
that.
biggest proof that we're not in that trap anymore is the fact that we're gonna have part-time people on a waiting list for the first time ever. So something's gotta be getting out there that we're doing things right. Because we now have more part-timers than we have slots for them. So,
I'm not saying anything negative.
At some point, you have a job. And I get that, and I think we're doing. I mean, I really don't know what else we can do to make it more enticing, aside from there are places paying people $20 an hour, and they're having the same problems we are. So it's not a money thing. It's not. In fact, we've only had one person ever come in and say, "Yeah, that's not enough money." We've got one person ever say that it was not enough money to come work for us. So, I mean, we're actually looking at boosting that up to make us comparable with the area. We're a little bit low, but I would like to at least be around where Springdale is paying their guys. And so that's going to be on the radar for next year's budget, is to boost those up to where our medic pay is. Just as an idea is, we want to pay the medics $18 an hour, and the basics will probably run up around 16. So basically, where you're starting at as a medic now will be the basic pay, and that's going to bring us in line with the area completely. So that's where we're at. And those people that have been here, obviously, they're not going to get knocked down. They're going to get paid what they get paid now. But
What about boosting the pay up to what a full-timer makes hourly? I mean, you're not giving them anything else, but.
it doesn't work, Mark. I get what you're saying, but literally there are people paying $22 an hour for part-time employees, and they can't get them.
I make $30 an hour, so.
Yeah, that ain't happening. I can't afford to do that. I can't even come close to affording to do that. Because when I do that, your next question is, well, why don't you just pay a full-timer? And I won't disagree with that, because if I'm going to do that, I'm basically paying a full-timer. So why wouldn't I?
Well, I mean, you don't
Yeah, we just can't afford it.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. La, 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 la. So overtime, how we fill overtime? Am I wrong? And this has been a huge pain point in the past. So because it was never out there, it was never written down exactly what it was. Guys, you're going to have access to exactly how they're filling this overtime. And this is not really different than what has been going on. But I think I have hit, gosh, there's always something that comes up, and I apologize, but, I think I've hit all the pain points that are in here, and I think this is written. Again, all the officers have reviewed this. HR has reviewed this. I think I've hit all the pain points that are present, and also explaining exactly how the officers are filling the overtime when it does come out. So with this, it goes into making the list at the beginning of the year. That list is based upon seniority, with everybody at 0 hours to begin with. One of the changes is that in the contract, it's referenced that overtime should be awarded basically by number of hours, and then seniority. So that's what we're going to work on doing, is when you sort that list, it's going to sort by number of hours and seniority. So if Greg has 24 hours and Cody has 24 hours, it becomes first on the list because Greg has more seniority than what Cody does. In the past, we've always done everything by date. And that, per the contract, is not how that was supposed to have been done. So continuity, again, across the line is what we're shooting for. And also so that you have the contract that you can reference, and then you also have the policy that mirrors the contract that you can reference anytime you have a question about what's going on.
If we hire an employee in July, do their hours get averaged when they start? Prorated, I guess would probably be a better way to put that.
No, the hours start from the moment they're hired.
Yeah, I think years ago they averaged it when they first went on the list. Now I think Cody starts at 0.
Okay, that's the reason I'm asking, I just.
Yeah. Yeah, and now he's got 24 apparently, yeah. I heard that last night. I'm like, well, that's a good morning, Cody.
So regardless of when that is, what time of year it is, whatever, they will.
Exactly. Now, as far as vacation, personal, and all that other stuff, depending on when you start, before which holiday, that is clearly spelled out exactly how many personal and holiday hours and such that you get. And it's also in the contract exactly how many vacation hours you gain based on what you start with and things like that. So,
Who is in charge of filling that? Are the captains going to take that responsibility? Or
That's going to depend on the day. Yeah. That's going to be that. I'm not going to say the captain has to do that, because that's something also the lieutenants need to know how to do.
Hey, Chief, just.
Sir.
Please believe I am not trying to overcomplicate this, but this came out the other day, and I'm just very curious. A page came out to members of the department to fill for the officers that are going to a class, obviously not eligible to everyone. How does that work in reference to adding to the hours on the list?
No, that is eligible to everyone. That was. When that was put out, that was eligible to everybody.
Except the officers that are going to the training.
You're getting overtime already.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get it. That's
Yeah.
not the point.
Okay. So you're saying those hours shouldn't be put on the list? Is that what you're saying? No, I'm just trying to understand what.
If we're following number one, that's correct.
Because today, overtime today does not go on the list. For the people that are off duty today, that does not go on the mandated.
It does not. It does not, because that's a specialized detail.
Right.
Wow, you're going to make friends with that one, Greg. I'm just saying.
But what Greg's telling you is his officer overtime Monday doesn't go on the list, but the other stuff does. I understand.
I see what you're saying. I get that.
Yeah, I see what you're,
No, I get it. I understand now. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. To be honest, I didn't think about it. Again, guys, we try and fill all these things. There's always a what if.
That's the only reason I'm asking.
Yeah. So,
What's Monday is, that's a class that.
yeah, that is true, Amy.
But it's not aged out to us. It's a class we have to go to.
no, but I see what Greg says. Does that go on the mandation list where some of us aren't eligible for that?
Only shift work is the way that was supposed to work.
Go on your overtime.
But it's not gonna go on my overtime.
There's always something.
Well, this is exactly, I mean, we fought this last year, and I just, I don't know if there's a great answer.
And people that come in for recall, the other people don't get charged.
Is that right? So recall doesn't go on the overtime list. Yeah, I guess that's true.
It's only supposed to be if you come in to fill a seat in a truck or a squad.
Well, that's what you're doing.
It's supposed to count towards that list.
Yeah, yeah.
When I did put it on there, it was more filling the seat. I get what Greg's saying in the fact that
Mhm.
from the mandatory time.
It's not eligible to everybody, or not eligible to everybody. It's the point I'm trying to make.
I put it in there and I never took it into account, and
Well, honestly, I never even thought about it. Again, never even thought about it because in my mind, it was fill in the days stuff. So yeah, we'll take it off. No, I mean, that's honestly, guys, I mean, it's just like what he's saying is that, you know, what Chief Mackey just said is if I put out a recall, then, and, you know, then those hours don't go on the overtime list either. And, you know, again, this is why this life is so complicated.
It's a catch-22. There is no good answer for it.
No, there's not. I mean, it's not a full shift.
Right.
But it is to provide coverage on a truck.
Hold on, let me speak as one of the three guys that's gonna be managing this. Can we just not all be adults and say life is a motherfucker sometimes? This is getting out of control. This is ridiculous. We're not, so what? Well, not everybody's available for SCAT. And, well, we got an AO here, you know, I feel like we have worked very diligently to do the right thing, to make this equitable across the board, and 2% of the time a year, it's just gonna suck.
Is he coming in to cover a seat on a truck, whether it's for 2 hours or 10 hours, 12 hours or 24 hours? Are they filling in covering?
He's going to an.
Yeah.
Well, then it doesn't matter, then it counts.
No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying he's going to an officer-only available training.
Then that doesn't
Require-
count. You're not.
Then
going to page out and it's going to count towards the list, it has to be eligible to every bargaining unit member.
Which in this case it would not, because we're going to officer-only training.
Why is it not, why is the
back
overtime not available?
You're talking about the back. I'm talking about the back credit.
Yeah, why is the overtime not available to everybody?
Because the officers are going to a training class.
Okay, if you call in sick tomorrow, you're not available for that overtime. So you can play that all day long. We're covering, the whole idea of overtime and mandation list and making it a part of crediting you on the mandation list is to attract you to pick up that overtime.
Okay.
So now you want to eliminate that attraction because somebody else didn't get that opportunity.
His hours that he goes to officer-only training are not going to count towards mitigating.
Okay, is that what you're going at, is the hours you're on? Okay, so your overtime for that. Right, right, would count. Yeah, they would count, you would. Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Part of being an officer, going by number one.
That's part of being an officer, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
the mandation list is mainly, the overtime that fills mandation list is to attract people to come in for overtime. You're doing something above and beyond your position, or it's required by your position, that's why you get paid for it. That's not gonna count towards mandation. It's filling your slot that counts towards mandation. That's,
But you're talking about number one.
well, right.
We're talking about eligible overtime for everybody. We're talking about
The way it's written. I understand what you're saying.
I don't know, I guess technically I could say too that you're not available to fill that position. You are available to take it, but because of your responsibilities, you're not available to accept that overtime.
You're still eligible to take that overtime.
So if you weren't in that class, and whatever it may be, and this time it just happens to be all the officers, but next week it may be, I don't know. Yeah. That are getting covered. And so it's the flip side for them.
My misunderstanding is entirely that the mandation is simply put, if you're putting a butt in a seat in the Sharonville Fire Department, that counts towards your numbers. Like, isn't it that just that simple?
Yeah, it is.
Like, we're talking in circles here, but like, I thought the idea was as long as you came to the Sharonville Fire Department and your butt was in a seat and you got an hour for that, that counted. Am I wrong in that?
That's what it was made. I like that. Make number one, butt and seat.
If I go outside, that is so self-explanatory.
Well, that's kind of what it says. It says manpower coverage.
If I go to an officer's training, that doesn't count. If my butt is sitting in a seat, that counts.
Butt in counts, butt out doesn't.
It's supposed to be this.
All right. So really, if we take number one and make it only hours that are related to manpower coverage will be added to the overtime list.
There you go. Or butt and seat, butt not seat.
What if?
I'm trademark.
Or, yeah, we could just say butt and seat. Yeah, because I'm just not willing to not, I mean, that just goes against my grain to say that those guys that signed up for that to come in to cover don't get credit for that.
Because then you're not ever going to get guys to fill those.
Yeah, we're mandating 2 people to come in on Monday. Yep. Let me highlight that. That way I don't, we'll fix that. All right. So again, as we're going through this, if I make a mistake, guys that do this all the time, feel free to correct me. You will not hurt my feelings. In the event that multiple shift openings are there, it's going to be resorted after each shift is awarded. So Ben Berg picks up 12 hours at the night. He doesn't want all 24. Then once he gets that, the list gets resorted and the next person gets it. Right? Yep. Just making sure. I don't want to, again, I don't do this all the time. I wrote it, but with assistance. So making sure I'm not saying something that isn't been going on. Yeah, that's the way that's the way that's supposed to be going on.
Hour slot and then resort.
Because,
You're doing it in your head, there's no paper.
yeah,
You're still resorting.
yeah, it's still going to be the same. You're just going to move him 12 hours down the list. So if he's 24 hours ahead of the next guy and he only takes 12, he's still going to be at the top of the list, but you're still going to go down to the next person because he doesn't want the AM shift. You know what I'm saying?
It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, it's still the same thing.
24-hour
Yep.
slot in my
Yep.
mind,
Yep.
Before I resource.
Yep. So there's that. This came up this year. Hours that are paged out, let's say December 20th of 2017 for January of 2018, those hours get applied to a 2018 list, right? The hours are being worked in 2018, they count in 2018. They don't count on the list at 2017. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Good. That's what I like to hear. I'm all about that. That makes life so much simpler. All right.
So easy now.
You'll be notified by CrewSense that it's going to be open. That's not a surprise to anybody. The way we fill it is still part-time qualified gets it first, bargaining unit members after that. And it's either 12 or 24 if you want a partial or a full shift. And then after that, it goes on. There's no preference if somebody wants 24, versus 12, whatever. Whoever's at the top of the list gets to pick what they want.
Okay, and one second. Chief, Becky, can you tell the part-timers how many extra hours that they're putting for, so we don't end up with Cody helping us out all year long and having to take the whole month of December off? And
Some of them like to do that. I'm serious.
Yeah, but we don't like for that to happen. We try and keep ahead of that.
Yes, in October, I started looking
Can't
at
stop them.
so that if they're gonna have too much time, I'd rather them lose a shift in October than at the end of the year.
And then on top of that, if I notice that Dave Messerschmidt picks up 6 shifts in June, we tell him, you do realize when you're doing this that this is going to affect your pay because you're going to have to be docked hours at the end of the year. So we're going to start doing, we see a pattern like that, we tell them. Because, they all know you can only have X number of hours a week average, and once you go beyond that, it's going to affect you. Most of them don't like to not have a paycheck in December. Cody will attest to that. He was not real pleased about that. In the event, this is new. In the event that no other employee requests that open shift, a captain may fill the open shift if it has been paged out at least twice, and it is less than 12 hours from the beginning of that shift. So that puts it in the immediate overtime position, right? It's not scheduled anymore, it's immediate. It's been paged out twice to all members. At that point, no one has called in and said that they want that shift. A captain is eligible to pick up that shift. Now the whole purpose behind that, guys, is so that this is another layer to prevent mandation. It's given those 3 guys an option to pick up a shift that you guys didn't want. And it's less than 12 hours before the beginning of that shift. We have a responsibility to ensure that somebody's going to be there for that day. If none of them wants to work it, then it goes to the mandation process. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes, sir.
In the event when a captain picks it up and it's at an outlying station, I know this is going to be more asses. Is he going to come to ride the truck, or is he riding the open spot?
If there is not a captain on shift that day, he will ride District 86. No, I'm just, that's clarification. Absolutely.
I'm just saying.
If there is another captain on duty that day, he'll fill in where it's best. Consider the patience is all I can say. All right. And it goes into, who's going to be eligible for mandation, when they're going to be notified. Guys, if you get that text from CrewSense saying that you're eligible for mandation, that qualifies as notification. Okay? Somebody doesn't have to walk up to you and say you're eligible. It's one of those things that when they do it in the morning, put that out there, that qualifies as you being notified, even if you're off on the morning shift. If you come in at night, you're still there. The way the contract is written, if you're off the night shift and somebody has to be mandated, we can tell you to come back in the next morning. That's the way the contract is written. That's what we went over, last fall too. Trades disqualifies you for mandation. Members with 24 hours off disqualifies you for mandation. If you have to work more than 48 hours straight, you're not eligible for mandation. So that is nothing. None of that is new. That's all there. Well, yeah, they'll tell you have to come back in. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, yeah.
just
I mean,
looking at
that shouldn't be a surprise that you have to come back the next day at that point.
Make sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that phone call may be at 5 in the morning,
Whatever, I'm just.
but
saying,
I'm just saying,
like,
yeah, I mean,
make sure
yeah,
You
yeah.
don't have to like get up at 5 a.m. and check through sets type of situation.
No, they'll make a phone call. So, I mean, if that does happen, you're number one on the list, guys, this goes back to responsibility. If you're number one or number two on that mandation list, and you're off that PM shift, and you're going home, you have the responsibility to answer that telephone in the morning. I'm just going to put that out there right now, that just because you're off, if you're still eligible for mandation, you have a responsibility to answer that telephone, to respond to that mandation if it requires it. Is that clear? Not that that's going to happen I mean, that's just an odd thing. But if it does, that's where it's at. This also goes into scheduled overtime, which is more than 12, at which point it's very clearly written there will be 3 hours window for you to respond to an open shift notification. Immediate overtime drops down to 30 minutes. That's even if it happens at 10 till 6 in the morning. That shift is still left open for 30 minutes before it's actually assigned. Now, ideally, hopefully, someone would volunteer to hang over until, that person is assigned or whatever. But, again, and also in this case, if that call comes in at 10 till 6, that person that's on mandation for that position can't leave until somebody fills that slot. Does that make sense, too? Mandated, rescinding overtime. You're probably going to see more of this. Not that it happens a lot, but in the times where that opportunity arises, we're not going to pull it from you 10 minutes before the shift starts. That's not going to happen. But if something changes and we no longer need that overtime, you will be notified that that overtime opportunity is gone. Those hours will be removed from the list, and you'll be put back on the list wherever you may fall. Again, that falls back to the budget. We can't have another $440,000 overtime year. In the past, we've just let it ride. And we just can't afford to do that with adding the new people and everything. Yes, sir?
I actually ran into this with firefighter Whitman a couple weeks ago, and myself and Captain Sons got a contract out. The contract says something to the effect that person remains at the top. They don't go back on the list for the camp.
So I had Noah read this too. The interpretation of that is this. Yeah. And I understand that you can read that way. This is, HR's verified version of it as well.
So they do not get first preference if you repaid them back out.
Whatever, if it's a 24-hour shift, you take that 24 hours off, resort the list, and where they fall on it would be where it is.
What he's stating is, we rescinded the overtime, and then, but there becomes another call off, and that person has already gone through the process, they've already vetted to be the top person. Just going off of the whole call out, and say, yeah, it's yours, as opposed to putting it back out. That's a good question.
Putting it back out again.
This was in 16 years, this is the first time this has ever happened. It literally, within a 10-minute span, we canceled Whitman's overtime because Leo got cleared that day.
Uh-huh.
We canceled Whitman, made the phone calls, made the adjustment. 10 minutes later, we had a call off. Now we have an open shift. And that's why we got overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So the language says, shall remain at the top of the list or whatever. So we hit a 10-minute span. Now, clearly, we can't run that out over 3 days, 6 days, 9 days, 12. I can't report down to Lieutenant Burns every morning that Tony Whitman's on.
We're using the list from 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Yeah. See, that just seems fraught with heartburn.
Right. In that particular instance, we had.
Because in reality, if I'm taking 12 or 24 hours away from somebody, that should put them back to where they got that overtime to begin with. Pretty close. Unless you're Chris Ellis and you've got 300 hours of it anyway. And, again, this is not going to happen a lot, but that's where that interpretation was. I get what you're saying, and again, I don't remember that ever happening before either. But
That just
Captain overtime, again, the captains handle their own schedule. They will cover each other to a point. At the point where it's not, one of them is not able to cover because there's only 3 of them, then that will go out, and then an on-duty lieutenant will assume the shift officer position, da-da-da-da.
Are they allowed to trade with bargaining members?
You know, that is a question that was asked, and I have not gotten an official interpretation on that, but that is a contractual thing that's in there, and I'm not sure. I would say no off the top of my head. But again, I'm not sure. I don't want to say yes or no on that right off the top.
So we're waiting for an answer from them.
Yeah, I mean, that's because it also says in there an officer should preferentially try and find a trade with another officer. I agree with that completely. I think they should absolutely try that, and I don't think that happens all the time, but that is something that should happen.
I just didn't
So.
know if they were allowed.
Yeah, they are not bargaining unit members. And my fear, Mark, is that, again, not that anybody would intend to do this, but you make a trade with Dan Sunderman, and then Dan doesn't show up for your shift. I mean, you know, it can get complicated, and I am trying my best to remove complication from all of this by mirroring contract, using exact language, and, you know.
What to say that you highlighted, remember?
I did. I won't forget. I wrote it down here, too. We're good. It's too late now.
Let me highlight this and I forget.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
The captains are gonna handle their own overtime, and I know we have a overtime issue as far as a monetary value. So, is that gonna be added, is there gonna be any money added to our budget for that, for them covering the overtime? Because if there's 3 of them and they cover each other at 15 shifts off a year each, you're looking at 360 hours. So that's gonna be a lot of overtime. They make the most. You're talking, you keep saying we can't have that 440. How's that gonna, what are we gonna do about that?
It's still, that's all budgeted in. Yeah, yeah. They don't make that much more than a lieutenant. They'll attest to that. I mean, it's only like 25%, so, you know.
It's still 360.
That was a joke. That was a joke.
No.
Yeah. So, yeah, in reality, that overtime is a wash, really, when you go to compare apples to oranges on that, as far as time goes.
An extra 360 per person if they cover.
Yeah. No, we took that into consideration when we did the budget last year. All right, so scheduling. Scheduling 100% mirrors the contract in its language and articles and sections. So with this, you'll also see the references to the daily staffing policy, the overtime policy, and I believe those are going to be the numbers that those were assigned. I went back and looked at things, and that should be where they fall out. If not, you'll see changes on that, but it'll just be the policy number itself. So request for time off, and I actually copied and pasted the language from the contract as far as scheduling goes. And guys, we are going to follow the 14 days ahead of time thing for any paid time off aside from comp time. So in the past, we've let you come in on the day before your shift or the day before your shift and say, I want to take a vacation day. I need you to be 2 weeks out on scheduled days like that. Now, this goes into it more down the line here, but vacation, personal holiday, comp time, and training leave all count into the number of people off. That's not a surprise. That's not new. I mean, that's obviously you're off. You count as a person off. One thing that we are changing is the way we do sick leave. So to clarify the situation that's happened in the past, if you're off sick, you count as a person off for 2 weeks as the second person off. Okay? That 2 week period is intentional because that 2 weeks means that we're mirroring the contract time period, so we're not having to remember 6 or 7 different clauses and exclusions on things. You count as that second person off from the time of the initial occurrence for 14 consecutive days. Not 14 shifts, 14 consecutive days. After 14 consecutive days on regular sick time, if you're still off sick, then you move to counting as the third person off for that day. Does that make sense to everybody? Again, in the past, there's been a 30-day number that went out there. There's a 3-shift number that went out there, da-da-da-da. This mirrors the contract, and also, if you think about it, if you call in sick and there's already 2 people off on that day inside that two-week window, then they bump to the third person being off on that day. So that makes everything match up. If it's greater than 2 weeks out, your time off has to be put in farther than 2 weeks out. So if there's a second position off 17 days away, you can still put in vacation time and it'll be approved because that will be the second person off. That window makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Can we change, if we're inside that 14-day window, can we cancel or move vacation or personal time down to the room? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, in the contract, it says that, and again, I think it's in here farther down, once it's within that 14-day window, I don't think you're allowed to move it. If overtime has been filled, yeah. So if there hasn't been overtime filled for that position, then yeah, you can. But if we've filled overtime to cover your position on that day, then no. The exclusion to that would be comp time. And to me, within that right here, so long as, if we've got 14 people on that day and you want to take comp time within that 2-week window, you can take comp time on that window because you're going to drop us down to 13. If taking that will drop you down to 12, you can't take comp time. If you come in that day and there's 14 people on duty and you say, I really don't feel like being here today. There's 14 people on duty. Can I go home on comp time? Yes, you can. After the shift starts. Again, my intent is to keep overtime as low as possible to keep us within our budgetary constraints. Adding people and such has boosted us up. We want to make sure that we hit our numbers. We cannot go over our numbers this year. That is the goal of all of this here. Personal and holiday time has to be scheduled by May 1st. Vacation time has to all be scheduled by August 1st. Otherwise, we will schedule that for you, and it will not be moved. If you wait until August 1st to do that, there are only X number of days available at that point. We're not going to go through and toss everything up into the air again. We kind of went over this, the awarding of time off. We did not change anything as far as what the contract says about the November 1st to the 15th, turning that stuff in and then awarding it by seniority. At that point, that will still be there. This just talks about the sick leave, where it is. If you're injured on duty, you do not count as a person off. When Leo hurt his ankle the other day, he does not count as a person off because he's injured on duty. So that still leaves everything wide open. If you get hurt on duty, it doesn't count against everybody.
That being said,
Yeah. Let's not. So, and then 2 bargaining members will be allowed to schedule time off. I mean, even if there's only 12 people on that day, for whatever, there's only 12 bargaining units, somebody quits, we still have to let 2 people off by the contract. Regardless of the number of people that are actually on that day, that's how that works, and we're going to follow that. If there's a 2-person Kelly day, obviously, just like the contract says, that third person is still allowed off because that's a contractually obligated thing. The major change with all of this is that for a while now, we have, for your sick leave excuses, it has been that, if it's for family or something other than yourself, it's automatically unexcused unless you have a doctor's note. The contract does not say that. The contract says sick leave across the board. So, and you get, per the occurrences that are on there, you get 3, unless you have more than 2 shifts off, then you have to have a note. All that stuff will be followed, but it doesn't matter if, Tim's off because his dog got sick and he had to take care of his dog. or if, you know, Suzanne is taking care of Titus, it still counts as an occurrence, one of your 3, that you don't have to, you know, you get 3 before you get that per the contract before that's actually counted as unexcused. So if you bring in a note, good. That just, you know, doesn't count against one of your 3 unexcused, I guess, excused absences, as it would be. But again, that's something that was being done that is not in line with what the contract said in our interpretation of it. Now, did it benefit administration a little bit? A little bit, but it also caused some headaches on payroll side, which I can attest to. So we're, again, some things are good, some things are bad, you know, but we just want to make sure that everything is out there, everything's in line with the contract, and that we're not jamming ourselves up and we're not jamming you up with all these little special circumstances that make life complicated.
So no sick time counts as hours worked now?
No, that's just the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah, you're up until, and again, there's different things,
You don't
but
have to explain that.
yeah,
It's
but
all right.
you get 3 occurrences basically that are basically automatically excused. After that, you're required to have a note, or if it's more than 2 shifts, you're required to, you know, all that stuff that's in there will be followed, but it's how it's written in there, not something that we've made up.
Okay, cool.
Yes, sir.
I don't know where this falls in, but where does military leave fall?
That's paid leave, so it's still a person off, right?
No matter time frame.
Well, I mean, again, if Jeff Vaughn's off for 6 months, he gets deployed. He would count as the 3rd person off because it's more than 14 days. That's where I would count, wouldn't you? I mean, that's what we've done in the past, and again, that would mirror into that. Because that has the potential for being lengthy.
How soon does he have to give you orders?
Jeff does a great job of doing them basically as soon as he finds out.
It's usually a month in advance.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Yes, sir? Chris?
Person calls off for their 4th time in a year and they don't bring it up. How's that handled?
It's unexcused.
Okay.
And by that, what I mean is he's called off. He's let you know he's not going to be in, right? But on the payroll side of things, that docks his overtime. So that's when that falls into, I've got to make adjustments in payroll for his automatic overtime if he hasn't worked any, and you know, that type of thing. For you, it doesn't. For you, it's not going to make any difference at all. For payroll processing, that's when it doesn't count as hours worked, and we dock his overtime into regular pay for the balance of those hours.
His 4th one, he can still use his sick time. It's not an unpaid time off.
No. Let's not say it's unpaid. No. You're still paid. Yeah.
But at that point, you're probably going to talk to him and say, or we're going to talk to him and say, look, you've had 4 occurrences, your last one.
Yeah,
Now
that's
you need to bring me a note if he doesn't, it's insubordination.
Well, you have to have a note, guys. If it's your 3rd time, you know, for it to be excused, you have to have a note.
4th time.
That's what I meant. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Your 4th time, you have to have a note. Unless it goes outside of the 2 shifts or some of the other things that are on there which require a note to begin with. And also, if it's before a holiday or directly after a holiday. There's a lot of things in there that really you guys should go read.
If they have time off scheduled.
If you have a vacation day scheduled your next shift and you call off the shift before that, you're supposed to have a note. So, and that's to prevent abuse, right? That stuff is written in the contract. That is not stuff that he and I have gotten together and said, we'd like to see this. That's what's actually written. Yeah, great. Or Ben.
So I guess what the question is if they do not bring in a note, then they're going to be open towards discipline? Is that what you're saying?
That's going to be on a case-by-case basis. That's going to be on a case-by-case. They are.
Management rights. It
You
says that
guys
the
are
chief's
mixing,
discretion.
you guys are mixing up time off as it relates to your auto overtime versus sick time abuse. Those are 2 different issues. So,
But with the note and the policy.
I'm not going to give you unpaid time off on your 4th shift. Does that make sense? Or your 4th occurrence?
I understand that, but where the note falls in is only to do with whether you're going to get your auto overtime or your previously worked overtime.
Yeah. It does not become, it takes it out of the hours worked category, changes your payroll processing.
Discipline following that is up to management.
That is up to management, and that would be dependent upon whether we consider it to be sick time abuse. Good way to, yeah, I think that's the best way to explain that. If you're calling off every Saturday throughout the year, you know, that's a pattern, guys. We get it. Yes, Wayne?
I have a non-time off question. When we divide the city, is it 42 or Reading Road? Reading Road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some people think it's 42. So
Oh, I haven't, yeah, no, it's Reading Road.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it says that in the policy. I think I wrote it there. So, okay, anything else? Because I think the doc's about ready to get started.
I have two.
Two.
Are we getting more Lucas devices?
You are. We'll get 2 more. Each squad's going to have one. Excuse me. We're trying to work one of them into the purchase of the new squad with some changes in that. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but we have it in the capital budget to get 2. So either way, we're going to wind up with 2.
Is that going to be like?
Soon.
Okay. And then question number 2 is there, we don't have a staff car at 88. We ran into an issue where we're going to use
You
it
will.
the other day.
You will.
But it's just going to be a matter of time.
Yes, because we ordered the captain's vehicle, and that should be in, I guess, now in May.
Middle May?
So by May or June, that'll be resolved because you'll have a staff vehicle up there again.
They getting a Fiesta?
Yes, exactly. That would be perfect. Yes, sir. I didn't hear you, Dan. Sorry.
To reevaluate our orientation program since we're hiring all fresh kids that have been at a
Yes, we have already begun discussions about that, actually. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be included in that we aren't doing. Yeah.
Station 87, what's the time frame?
You had to say it. You had to.
And 88, so you might as well just throw them both.
No, I giggle about that, guys, because as you all know, that was supposed that. Okay, I don't want to start it off that way. We found out yesterday afternoon at 3:30. 3:30. You know, things happen at 3:30. That apparently the $893,000 that we had appropriated into the 405 building fund for Station 87/Station 88, right? Apparently, they did not include in the end-of-year budget legislation architectural fees. So the long and the short of this story is I've got to go to council, get architectural fees approved out of that fund through an ordinance, as opposed to, because I tried to put in the PO for architectural fees, and you don't have any money appropriated for that. And I went, blah, 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 because that was quite the discussion with not only myself and admin, but also with council about how that was all going to work. So I think mistakes were made. But they're not incorrectable. So we're going to do that. Once that PO comes back, we're planning on getting like CT and MSA together and saying, hey, give us some proposals, and then going from there. So that won't be long, but it'll probably take a month before I get the PO back now because I have to go to council.
Everything that MSA did prior to this was
New building. Yeah.
building new. Well, now, since we are remodeling, they're going to be starting from scratch also.
Yeah.
So I would not,
It's not going to get started this year. It'd be a miracle.
yes.
Yep.
I know you're calling it a hydrant truck.
The maintenance vehicle?
I haven't had, okay, yeah, so is it because I haven't done hydrant maintenance outside of, typical stuff in probably 2 years.
We're going to call it a maintenance vehicle.
Okay.
And basically, yeah, it's still the stuff we talked about. It's going to have a crane and air compressor and all this other stuff on it. We decided to use the old Medic as the chassis.
Yeah.
And, it's still the same body that we talked about originally back in the day. We just haven't gotten that chassis back with it. It's got the cab back on it now.
The box
Yeah.
is off.
Yeah, and the box is off. So it's going to be coming back, and then it's going to be going and doing that. The main purpose of that is if we have to go pick up a hydrant, you're going to have a crane to do that. And then if we have to go do maintenance on something, we'll have that. And then that'll tow whatever we need it to tow. So, yeah, we're not doing much hydrant maintenance. But, I mean, if you have to reset one, you can swing that out, use it to pick it up, spin it, set it, whatever it is you need to do.
Get rid of the little trailer.
That will be emptied, yes. And it would probably be repurposed. But Mr. Gorey?
With being at 12, with, so the current Lucas device is going to stay on Medic 87, or is it going to go in the district car? How's that going to work? With the Medic being dropped?
Oh, I didn't think about that, Tim.
That's why I'm here. It's a good question.
It is. It is indeed.
I didn't hear the question.
Speak clearly, please.
He said that with the new staffing with District 86, and since Medic 87, where it's currently located, would be the first one to drop down to third out, then, is that the best place for the current Lucas device? It's probably not. Probably the district car is a better place because you're going to be running on non-breathers anyway. That's just off the cuff of my head, but,
Taking away my toys, Dave.
Yeah, not for long. We're going to order those before long. Yes, Mr. Chupka?
With the, just real quick, with the splitting of the districts, are we going to, in H87 first responding, are they going to, have a safety pad so we can now merge that data with off-mine?
So, yeah. So the spare safety pad, I think Captain Sunderman and I had a discussion along these lines yesterday a little bit. That spare safety pad, I think, can go in the district car, or it can go in engine 87. It doesn't matter. Either way, we have new ones in the budget to replace safety pad units this year. The current ones will go to the engines so that we can do just that. We can forward the stuff. I don't think you're going to have time to get a lot of information on that most of the time. But if you can, great. And also, don't forget, if you're responding into Blue Ash or Blue Ash is responding to us, we can automatically shoot that back and forth between Blue Ash and Evendale. Those are both linked agencies now. So,
What's the budget frame or time frame for life pack 12s on the engines? 'Cause I had a run the other day, and it
this is their last year, I believe.
it didn't want to do a 12 lead. It took me.
This is their last year, but it's still under maintenance contract right now. So
So then we're going to get new packs for the buses and then take the old ones and put on the engine?
that's going to be a discussion that we're going to have. Yeah. Again, those are $47.5 a piece.
I was just curious because.
And I don't mean 4,750.
No, I just didn't know because.
Yeah. No, we haven't made a final decision on that at all. I have opinions, but they're just opinions. All right, guys, if you have any questions, see me, see your officers, see Chief Mackey. We're happy to talk about all of this. Again, if there will be hiccups, I can guarantee it. The policies are in effect starting today. They will go out to everybody via email. There's also going to be a link to the presentation on YouTube. That will go out to everybody via email. And that'll be that. Ben, do you have one more thing? Okay. All right, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.